Hey, hi, and hello. Welcome back to my channel. I do appreciate you guys stopping by. We're going to be talking about Cody Legebokoff's trial and what his new version of the story was. And if you haven't heard this case, I will post the link to the video in the description box below. I would recommend that you watch that before this one so you know the entire story. Also, I want to apologize for making this second video. It wasn't as long as I thought it would be, and I should have just included it in the first video, so oops. Anyway, let's just get right into it.
The trial for 23-year-old Cody Legebokoff is underway in BC Supreme Court in Prince George. Legebokoff faces 4 counts of first-degree murder in relation to the deaths of Jill Stachenko, Natasha Montgomery, Cynthia Ma, and Lauren Leslie between 2009 and 2010. Crown Counsel Joe Temple presented the jury with a snapshot of what he plans to present over the course of the trial. He told the jury 3 of the 4 women died as a result of blunt force trauma. The trial itself is expected to be very involved.
The estimate for the trial that the lawyers and the judge have agreed upon appears to be 6 to 8 months. The Crown is estimating approximately 100 witnesses. That could change over time, just as the estimate of the length of the trial may change, depending on how quickly or slowly the evidence goes in.
So just a brief reminder on what happened. In 2014, Legebokoff was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. During the trial, the Crown called 93 witnesses that included everyone from personal witnesses to forensic experts. On August 1st, 2014, the Crown rested its case, and now it was time for the defense. No witnesses were called, no experts were called to the stand. The only person that was to testify was Cody Legebokoff himself.
It was a major day in the high-profile multiple murder trial of Cody Legebokoff. Today, the Prince George man took the stand to defend himself against 4 first-degree murder charges. According to his lawyer, Legebokoff chose to testify to give his version of the story.
The question of whether Cody Legebokoff would defend himself was answered within minutes. His defense lawyer, James Heller, called Legebokoff to the stand. He admitted to being involved in the deaths of 3 of the women he's accused of murdering.
Now, the defense started with the opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've heard that the Crown has closed its case. At this point, the defense is not compelled to call any witnesses to put on evidence, but it is our election to do that. He's going to tell you what he has to say about these charges. I'm going to advise you right now that there is going to be much that is incriminating and quite shocking in this evidence. But he is going to tell you his story. His story is different than the Crown's story. It's incriminating. But he's going to tell you what he wants to tell you about these horrible incidences. At that, Legebokoff rose from his seat and went up to the witness stand. He was wearing a suit and a tie and actually seemed relatively calm. Heller, his defense lawyer, asked him about his family background. And it was a normal childhood. He had normal parents that he got along with very well. He stated that they went fishing and went on family vacations. He talked about being avid in sports, and he was on the snowboarding team. He played soccer and minor league hockey for like 14 years. He described a typical Canadian teenager's life. He went on to say that he had a lot of friends and one serious relationship in high school. He said that he started drinking around 13 years old and then later started experimenting with smoking pot. He graduated from Fort St. James Secondary School and then moved out of the family home to Lethbridge, Alberta. He used the website Nexopedia quite a bit and began meeting girls, which according to him is when he became more sexually adventurous and was having sex with at least 6 different girls. Some of them he met online, some of them he met at the bars. Now, he moved back to Fort St. James a little while later and started a job at the Ford dealership in Prince George. He rented an apartment house with 3 of his female friends, and it was a party house. Lots of people coming and going, and some of these parties ended up getting quite large. I mean, we're talking over 100 people sometimes attending these parties. Now, he said it was at one of the biggest parties that Legebokoff met X. who the heck was X? Well, that's exactly what the judge thought as he looked over at him with this quizzical look. Now, the defense attorney said, "Explain to the court what's going on here." So, according to Legebokoff, there were 3 other people involved with the crimes he was charged with. Now, he went on to say that he's going to refer to them as X, Y, and Z. He knew he was going to get a boatload of jail time anyway, but he wasn't going to be that guy that snitched out other people. Legebokoff went on to say that he met X at one of these large parties, and that was the first time that he started using cocaine. X had given him his personal address and said, "Hey, come by any time if you want more." Now, his attorney asked him, "Did you have any involvement with the murder of Jill Stachenko?" Legebokoff replied in a calm manner, "Yes." It was Thanksgiving weekend and all his roommates were away for the weekend. He invited Jill over, then later on, X showed up with 6 other people. They all partied, started doing cocaine, and continued to drink. Legebokoff stated that he ended up having sex with Jill that night, and then they went back into the living room to continue to party. The 2 guys, X and Y, later told Legebokoff that Jill would have to be killed because she owed someone a lot of money. Now, Legebokoff, without hesitation, picked up a pipe wrench and handed it to X. X walked up to Jill, who was sitting on the couch, and hit her in the head. As she fell to the floor, he hit her a few more times. Now, Legebokoff didn't say or do anything. He just sat there when all of this was happening. Afterwards, he noticed that she was bleeding on the carpet, so he took her body and dragged her from the living room into the laundry room, as this was just a normal thing. Legebokoff, X, and Y later put the body in the back of a pickup truck. Then he watched X and Y drive away, and then he said that was the last time he ever saw her. He said he stayed behind, he cleaned up, and then threw all her clothes in a dumpster. When asked how he felt about this, he just replied, "There really wasn't much I could do about it," and then he just continued on like nothing happened. There wasn't much he could do about it? Was he being serious? Anyway, a year went by and X and Y showed up at his place again, this time with Cynthia Mass. Partying and smoking crack just like the previous time, X and Cynthia were on the other side of the living room when all of a sudden Legebokoff heard a loud crack. He looked over and saw Cynthia falling to the floor. Watching, he saw X take something out of his jacket pocket and continued to hit her until she stopped moving. X turned around and said, "This had to be done." Now, Legebokoff remained so nonchalant and didn't seem bothered that this was happening in his home. Once again, they carried the body out to the pickup truck, drove off, and disposed her body in LC Gun Park. But what happened next was even more disturbing. When they reached the park, they realized that Cynthia was not dead. But instead of just leaving her there, Legebokoff grabbed a pickaroon, which is a tool for, moving logs. He handed it to X and watched as he finished the job. He was so matter-of-fact while testifying, as if this was, like I said, just a regular thing that happened. What was his excuse for not having any emotions about what happened? Well, he claimed that the drugs he was taking made him just not care about anything. But to me, that didn't even really make any sense, because according to his own testimony, he cared about his family and his girlfriend. Can drugs cause selective caring? I don't know. Anyways, he pretty much repeated the same story when Natasha Montgomery came over. The only difference with that was after she was hit the first time, she ran. But unfortunately for her, they ended up catching her. X killed her, and Legebokoff stayed and cleaned up while the others went and disposed of the body. 3 women killed in his home, and he was just so calm and so detached from the entire thing. After the defense covered the first 3 murders, he then asked about the last victim, Lauren Leslie. Now, Legebokoff briefly talked about his girlfriend, then once again told the story about him heading over to his grandfather's house but decided to see Lauren on the way there. Now, that part of the story remained consistent. He said that Lauren had started hitting herself, but this time added that she had seen a knife and cut her own throat. He said that he then panicked and then picked up a wrench and hit her. I mean, how many times has this story changed now? 4, 5? I've lost count. When asked why he's telling this version of the story now, he basically said what he did was wrong and he knows he has to be punished for it, but he wanted everyone to know what really happened and not what people think happened. The cross-examination began. The first thing the Crown did was to establish to the court that Legebokoff's pattern of lying and all his changing up of the stories. Then went on to demonstrate the inconsistencies of what forensics showed and what Legebokoff was saying. This included so much, but basically the amount of blood that was found at his home didn't match up with his stories. The wound marks on the bodies did not match up with his stories. And also the fact that there was no semen found anywhere, even though Legebokoff claimed to have consensual sex with Lauren. The Crown also wanted to establish that during the time of Lauren's death, these mysterious X, Y, and Z people were nowhere around. No footprints, no DNA of anyone else. He was the only person present at the time of her death. You could see Legebokoff was starting to become agitated and argumentative. So much so, the judge had to remind him a few times to just answer the questions without being argumentative. The Crown started to drill down on the existence of these other people that were involved. And they basically said, so in the course of a month and a half, you became so friendly with this drug dealer, Mr. X, that he elects to make arrangements to murder Jill in your apartment and in your presence. And you expect the jury to believe that you were so trusted by this drug dealer that he was willing to commit murder in your presence after only a month and a half of knowing him? Legebokoff simply stated, yeah. The Crown argued to the jury that sexual offenders get more heat in federal prison than rats do, and that's why Legebokoff made up this entire story of others being involved. He did not want to be labeled as a sexual offender. If he was, it would make his time in federal prison absolutely hell. Despite the Crown drilling him on the stand about the identity and the validity of these people called X, Y, and Z, Legebokoff stood by his statements, but his face was turning bright red. You could see the anger building up in him. After putting holes about everything Legebokoff testified about, the Crown smiled and said, that's all the questions I have. On September 2nd, the defense presented the closing arguments, basically acknowledging Legebokoff's guilt, but only to second-degree murder, putting the onus of the murders on these alleged X, Y, and Z. The Crown, in his closing argument, reiterated the inconsistencies with Legebokoff's story and all the forensic evidence, but more so than anything, really emphasized on the fact that it's pretty much inconceivable that these drug dealers X, Y, and Z would trust someone after such a short period of time to feel comfortable murdering someone in front of him. It just doesn't make any sense. Shortly before 6 p.m. the next day, a jury of 8 men and 4 women returned with a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder on all 4 counts.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. A Prince George jury has found 24-year-old Cody Legebokoff guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Jill Stuchenko, Cynthia Mays, Natasha Montgomery, and Lauren Leslie. A jury of 12 reached a verdict in their second day of deliberations, bringing an end to the 3.5-month-old trial. Camille McDonald was in the courtroom when the verdict was delivered late this afternoon, and reports from a boisterous courthouse.
Guilty on all 4 counts. That makes Cody Legebokoff Canada's youngest serial killer. Just now inside the Prince George courthouse, Legebokoff didn't flinch when the verdict was read.
Legebokoff was just 24 years old when he was convicted. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison for each conviction, but each 25-year sentence runs concurrently with the other 3. Due to Section 745.6 of the Criminal Code of Canada, formerly called Fate Hope Clause, Legebokoff will be able to apply for parole in 2029 after only serving 15 years for 4 first-degree murders. If his parole is granted, Cody Legebokoff will be a free man at just 39 years old. Oh my. Now just a little side note. In BC, there is a stretch of road that has many unsolved missing and murder cases. It is known as the Highway of Tears. This stretch of road is about 450 miles long, and it goes between Prince George and Prince Rupert. It's also the only main road that connects the 2 towns. The disappearances and murders began in 1969, and in 40 years, more than 40 women have gone missing or have died due to foul play. It is such a horrible thing because, as of today, most of these cases are unsolved and have absolutely no explanation. And you're probably wondering why I'm even bringing this up. Well, because there are so many theories when it comes to the Highway of Tears and where Cody Legebokoff committed his crimes, some people do speculate that Legebokoff took advantage of this area and the background in order to commit these crimes. Or could it be that several people are involved in these missing and murdered women from the Highway of Tears, and this is just one part of a bigger picture? What do you guys think? Do you think that there were other people involved, or was Legebokoff just trying to make his stay in prison easier? Do you think this is tied to the Highway of Tears, or was it some guy just taking advantage of the situation? Let me know in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this. And that's it for today. And until next time, please take care and be safe.